Well, hello, fellow readers. It's been a while since we've done a little virtual event here at Baker. I cannot tell you how excited I am to bring the author tonight to you. It turns out, have been reading his books since 2000 when he told us that he had hit the CBA market. So Robert Whitlow, I am so glad you're here to join us tonight.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here. We've waited too long to do this.
Yeah, I agree. And I know I said it earlier too, is you have a standing invite to come on into Baker anytime. So if you ever get into Michigan, you just stop in and say hi.
Okay.
But yeah, I have truly, and for the audience, I have truly enjoyed Robert's books for many, many years. Some of you that know me, first of all, let me apologize. I do have a little bit of a cold. So I'm sucking on halls to keep my cough under control. So I do apologize for that. So, and that way, if I spit it out, then you can all laugh at me. So, so tell us a little bit about your new book, Relative Justice.
Okay, I'm excited about this. It's a story about a family of lawyers. You know, one thing you can say about lawyers is you just can't have too many of them. And so I have three lawyers in this book, one of whom unfortunately spends quite a bit of the book in the hospital or in some kind of care. But the primary characters in the book are a male attorney and his sister-in-law, who is also an attorney, and they end up working together on a case, and that has to do with a kind of a suit against a big pharmaceutical company. They represent a man from their town who's kind of an herbalist, an interesting gentleman that has developed this kind of natural-based remedy that's been extremely effective, and so he patented it, and now he discovers that he thinks somebody may have stolen his patent. And then it goes from there. And I have to tell you, Chris, it gets even a little more serious than just your ordinary lawsuit.
It does. I you know what? There's something about your books that, and I think one of the things, and it really struck me in this one, okay, is the way you write your female, whether they're a co-lead or a straightforward lead, is phenomenal. Okay, and I don't mean that in an ultra feminist way at all. Okay, this is just a normal woman reading books, and you write your female leads as somebody I want to hang out with. They're strong, they're intelligent, they're loving, they're caring. I mean, they're normal. I had, and then one of the whole time I'm reading this one, I kept thinking, okay, I ask him this. Where do you get that from?
Well, I think I've really hung around with some really awesome women in my life. Okay. And so, that influence, honest to goodness, from my mother, and I've been married for almost 42 years to just an amazing person. And I have an older sister who's really, really smart. And I always knew growing up she was the smart one in the family. But she made a comment early on. She said, Robert, it just doesn't seem like you don't have a problem with women. And I said, well, I really don't. I just have a ton of respect, and especially for the getting in touch with the nuance. Women are so nuanced and have so many facets to their personality, and men, we live in black and white, and women live in color, and so I do the best I can to try to go into that world and write about it and portray it in a way that produces the same reaction you just described.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I recommend your books to like the younger generation, male or female, because the characters work together. And in this one, being a family book, I love the dynamics between the in-laws that you brought in. There wasn't, so often in a book, and I understand you got to have the tension. I do, but the in-laws are the nit part, and they're always grumping about something, and they weren't. These two couples you wrote were not perfect. They fought. There's things happen, but they worked together. they were friends. They were married, but they were friends too. And I
Yeah.
really like that. So,
Well, and I think it's part of that. That's intentional, Chris, because I try to avoid stereotypes. You know, like the wicked stepmother, or
right.
the terrible in-law, because those things, while they obviously can have real life relevance, it doesn't necessarily reflect the way things are in a lot of situations. So I think to come at it from a different way.
Oh, I think Robert froze a little bit there, so we're gonna kind of keep moving forward until he pops back in here. So make sure you send, oh, there you are. Oh, good. Then I don't have to blather on.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. I lost you guys. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I am up in the mountains, you guys. So I'm way back in the hills of North Carolina, staying with some friends, and planning on going trout fishing early in the morning. So
Oh, how fun is that? So, and you said we're in the mountains of where?
North Carolina, we're outside of Blowing Rock, North Carolina.
Nice. Oh, beautiful there.
Yeah, it's a
Beautiful.
gorgeous area.
Yeah. So now I'm going to be jealous for a little bit. So, yeah, I love North Carolina. It's a gorgeous state. So, but yeah, and I agree. You do that well, where you do not write the norms. So, and I appreciate that. So one of the things I found, okay, I'm going to be completely honest with you. If you had told me I'm going to write a book about copyright infringement of a drug company, I would be like, oh, well, that sounds really interesting. Okay, but it is interesting. It's fascinating. All the little details you had to put into it. How much detail? Is there more detail than you put in, or is that like, this is why and how we do this? The copyright.
Yeah, it's definitely simplified
Okay.
and streamlined.
Okay.
Because most of the folks that are on this call tonight, if you had to sit in and watch a trial, you would really have trouble staying awake. I mean, in real life, it's rarely very exciting. And so when you're writing a novel, I try to, what I do present, I want it to be realistic, and to the degree that that's possible. And some of the most encouraging comments I get are from fellow attorneys who will write or say, you captured what it feels like to walk into that courtroom. And that's what I want to be able to do. But it's compressed, but I try to provide enough detail, Chris, that it's because people like to learn.
I do. Yep.
And so enough that it introduces them to that world, because lawyers are like any profession. You have that secret world that you live in, and you're wanting to invite the folks to come in to experience that vicariously. So, a lot of times the first drafts might have more detail, and then when I go through and edit, I'll kind of stream some of that out, because I don't want people to start skimming and turning the page without reading.
Yeah, I can see where that happened. So then I have to ask this, because you have an herbalist, and all of a sudden I'm blanking on his name, who I love. He was such a great, quirky.
Yeah, his name is Zeke.
Zeke. I love that name. With that, and the things that are claimed in the book. Now, again, I understand it's fiction, but in your research, is some of what you mentioned, is any of that stuff they're working on or able to do at all?
That was completely made up.
Oh, darn.
Sorry, because if it was real, I'd probably run out and patent it, and then
and then we'll talk.
buy an island somewhere. But no, that was I just tried to make it plausible, but it wasn't based on any real life evidence. Now, a lot of the legal stuff could be picked out of cases, but not that particular aspect of it. And one thing that the novel emphasizes is what the lawyers have to go through to try to figure out if they even have a case. And that's extremely realistic in that kind of scenario.
Yeah. and like you said, there's some more twist in here, so I don't want to give anything away either, but I did find that research quite interesting. I mean, here's an expert and that's an expert, but there are experts on, I mean, a lot of different things.
Yeah. And I think that's just part of the educational process. When Tom Clancy wrote the Hunt for Red October with all this detail about submarines in it, people said, "Oh, nobody's going to read that." And then Ronald Reagan read the book, and after he was shot by John Hinckley, and they asked him when he came out of the hospital, "Mr. President, what have you been doing?" He said, "Oh, I've been reading this book, and it's great." And that launched Clancy's career. But people, in that kind of, they like to learn and feel like they come out of a story, maybe not just entertained, but a little bit smarter than when they went in.
I do like to feel smarter even for a little while. So I appreciate that. So, and maybe you've answered this a little bit, but so for your writing, we're going to kind of muddle here a bit. Do you have a tendency to have more of the research in there and then you and your editors pull it out, or do you pretty much know what you want in there and then you flesh that?
Yeah, I will do a modest amount of research.
Okay.
And by modest, I mean, I would be surprised if I did more than 3 or 4 hours of research.
Okay.
And that's usually maybe on the medical parts of it. Although in my law practice, I've done a lot of work in the medical field, representing people with disabilities.
Oh.
And so I have, a fund of knowledge to draw on about health conditions. So it's really my call usually on what gets pulled out.
Okay.
And I'm pretty zealous to try to, move things forward, but yet, create a world that the reader enjoys living there for 400 pages. And, with characters and setting that, they find to be a place they want to hang out. So. Okay.
That was exactly what I was asking. I wasn't sure if I was asking it right. So thank you. Because it's just always interesting, especially when you have the background that you do, that you can write. I mean, okay, I can't write, but if I would write a lawyer book, I would have to do all the research on being a lawyer, but you bring that to the table.
Yeah, that's why I don't write any books that are set in Grand Rapids.
You should come visit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've heard everything. It's a great place at certain times of the year, but I'm so highly educated, I don't have an accent, but I've lived my whole life in the South. So, all my books are set in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, which are the 3 states I've lived in.
Okay.
And and in an area of expertise that I have familiarity, and I think the smart idea on that for writers is when you are writing about an area that you know about, whether it's geographic or topic, when you're familiar with it, then you can add the layers and the nuance that make it, more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, and I think there's an extra flavor in there. There's something about your heart being in that story that the reader can find too. So I have to ask, because people always comment on this, especially if we have somebody here live, is do you have a favorite character in any of your books? You've written many of them. So.
Yeah, I do have some favorite characters. Before we came on for the event this evening, we talked about a book, Jimmy, that I wrote a number of years ago about a mentally challenged young boy. And Jimmy is one of my favorite characters of all time. And the remarkable thing about that book is I wrote the story, and then 2 years later, one of our daughters had a little baby boy with Down syndrome.
How interesting.
And he's 14 now.
Awesome.
And one of the unique relationships in the book was between Jimmy and his paternal grandfather, his grandfather. And Jimmy did not have Down syndrome, but he had limitations. But,
Right.
you know, one of the first things my wife told me when Hunter was born was, you know, you get a chance to be like grandpa to this little boy.
Yep.
And that has been the case in that book. Instead of art imitating life, it was life kind of imitating art. So that would be one character. One other one that I would mention quickly would be I wrote a book called Mountaintop.
Yeah.
And there's a character in there. One of the main characters is a guy named Sam Miller, who had dreams, and he was had a landscape business. And I tell you, Chris, I love that guy.
Really? How
And
interesting.
I actually knew somebody that inspired that particular character, and I had such respect for that gentleman. And to be able to portray him in a book and honor him, he's with the Lord now. That fella was just an incredible opportunity and honor. So, I mean, there are a lot of characters. I tell folks I've been all the good characters, and I've been none of the bad characters. So I influence all of them. But you know, those would be a couple that stand out.
Yeah, and I agree. And audience, if you have not read Jimmy, track it down and read it. It is that good. Yeah, that's one of those people that know me. If a book is on my bookshelf, there's a reason. And Jimmy sits on my bookshelf. So I'm always curious. And in this case, I like this question is, of all the genres that are out there, you know, because you write what I call lawyer mystery. So mystery, adventure, Chosen People and Chosen Land had the action adventure to it, which I want to touch back on because that was different for you. But anyways, of all the other genres that are out there, what one would you pick to write instead of mystery?
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really influenced a lot in the reading I did when I was younger by Tolkien, Lewis, some of the early science fiction writers, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, a lot of those books have to do with world creation, creating the world. And I enjoy world creation, and I enjoy the character development. And so I think to be able to do that in that way, I think I would possibly enjoy that. I don't have time to do that now, but you know, someday I might, you know, delve into that arena.
Yeah. Interesting. And I think of all the ones, I think if you had said romance, that one I might have been more shocked by.
Well, when I didn't even know my first novel list was going to have any romance, and all of a sudden it just kind of popped up, and I had one of my sons he was a teenager at the time. He said, "Oh, Dad, don't write a cheesy romance novel." But I said, "Hey, it's part of the life of this guy." And but you know, the other thing I might enjoy doing, Chris, if I got a chance, I would probably like making a go at a comedic novel, writing a comedy.
Okay.
One that, you know, I try to have some light humor, wry humor in most of the books at some point, but to really drill down into that and make it a key part of it, I think that would be a blast. So
that sounds like fun. And you always do have some, if nothing else, dry humor in the books. I always enjoy that because halfway through the book, I'll be going, "Oh, my dad would like this." So, and I did see on the bottom, somebody asked about the choose your own ending for Jimmy. And I meant to mention that, but there's a reason you had that.
Yeah. And of course, I won't give anything away for those that haven't read the book, but it has a somewhat controversial but very dramatic ending. And so I knew that there might be some reaction, you know, just because, and I was hoping there would be, that people would care enough about the characters to have an opinion.
Yep.
And so I actually wrote two endings to the novel and presented to the publisher and said, "Okay, you guys decide which ending to print." And they did, and they said, we'll put the other one on your website. So there's an alternate ending to the book that's it's still up there on my website. And then there's also a film. We did an independent film of that.
That's right.
And so that has the ending on that was also a point of discussion. The only other thing I'd mention about Jimmy real quick is that's the only audiobook I ever read.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I was so glad for that. That book meant so much to me, and that I read. It took 3 days. It was brutal work.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It was, but I'm so glad I got to do that, and so I did do the audio. Of course, all of them are on audio, and they're available at Baker Book. But I got to do that and enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, then I got to ask, would you, I mean, obviously it's a lot of work, 3 days, and I don't know, what is that, a 250, 300 page book. So you're reading a lot, but would you do it again for yourself or somebody else's books?
Not for somebody else. I might do it for me. When I was in law school, one of my kind of my service projects was they had a site for books for the blind in Athens. I went to the University of Georgia Law School, and so they recruited students to read the books so they would be available for people that are visually impaired. And so I did that when I was in law school, and mostly a lot of legal books, but other things as well. And so I enjoyed doing that then. But I'm not interested in another career.
Okay, I'll give you that. And then, of course, on the side note here, I got to ask, do you do the different voices or do you?
No, that's a great question. I did not try that. I said, I cannot pull that off. And I just played it straight,
Yep. And I mean, as long as you're not using monotone, that's great.
Yeah.
Too. But
Yeah.
it was curious.
I was just, what you're getting right now, that's what you get.
Well, it's always good to know if, we run out of readers, we'll come find you. So for you, what is the hardest part of your writing?
Wow, I don't, there's nothing that's really hard. I mean, I enjoy it.
Okay.
Goodness, Chris, there's, I want it to be the best, and
Yeah.
I feel that responsibility, but am I excited? Even after 22 books to turn on the computer and find out what happens? Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I don't, I don't never had real serious writer's block.
Okay.
I've gone down some dead ends in stories and kind of regretted that. But a lot of times what I try to do is before I end a writing session, I leave something still kind of as a tag that I can pick up with the next time I open the computer. And you can kind of tell from what I'm saying is I don't write from a detailed outline. I have an idea at the beginning and the end. But a lot of things that happen in the middle are as much a surprise to me as I hope they'll be for the reader. I'm like, wow, I did not see that coming. And the book I'm working on right now, I'm about to finish the first draft of one. And there's a question throughout the book, the reader's going to know this, that it's one of 2 or 3 people that really did the bad stuff.
Okay.
And I did not decide who that was until yesterday.
Oh.
And I've written 105,000 words. So I'm coming to the very end of the book. They're usually about 115 to 120. So yeah. I left it unknown in my mind so that I wouldn't give it away.
Interesting.
During the writing
now I'm going to have to try to figure it out before that.
Yeah. So when I go back, I'll try to, straighten it out and make it more seamless. But
right.
That I've done that multiple times where I didn't know exactly how things were going to end because I wanted to keep that what we call micro tension working throughout the whole story, which is the thing that you've got the overarching tension of the plot, and then you've got the micro tension of each scene, and that's what hopefully keeps the reader turning the page.
Definitely. That's interesting because I was going to ask you that. But now, do you set yourself like goals during the day then? You know, like I'm
Yeah,
going to write. Okay.
yeah. I try to most sessions. I try to write 1,000 words.
Okay.
Um, some days I don't. I try to write most every day. I'm not writing tomorrow. I'm going fishing.
Okay.
But and if my wife says, "Hey, we need to go do something this evening," because most of my writing is in the evenings.
Okay.
I try to be relaxed about that. But I mean, nobody's up there going to do this for me. I mean, I don't have any little writing notes up in my writing room.
Yeah.
So uh, and I'm on about a book every 12 to 14 months. So that's a reasonable pace if I am diligent.
Okay. Well, then I'll try not to nag you for them quicker. So, so obviously somebody was asking you at, you know, the bad guy in your next book is at the end there. So somebody asked, what's one of the biggest surprises a character has pulled on you then? And did you leave it in the book?
Well, I'll tell you, this one I'm working on right now was a surprise.
Okay.
Because I think there was a lean in one direction.
Oh.
And then I just realized it's going to be different. Goodness, there's so many things, you guys, that I just did not see coming.
Okay.
It happens a lot. I mean, it really does. It happens in every book. I wrote a book called Trial and Error. It's one of the more recent books.
Yep.
And early in that book, the main character is visiting his mom, who's a widow, and he notices that he says, "Hey, is there anything you need done around the house?" I was saying he's a good son, he'd ask that question. And she said, "Well, the light's out in the stairs going down to the basement." So I said, "Okay." So I had him go out there and change the light bulb. And when he did, and all this is just coming to me right in the moment, okay? None of it was pre-planned. He looked down and there was a box at the bottom of the stairs. And I said, "What's in that box?" So I had the character go down the stairs and open the box. And there was one of the key things about the entire story was in that box.
Yep.
And I had no idea it was there until he pulled the top off that box.
Oh, I love that.
And I thought, okay, if I had this reaction in writing it and creating it, then hopefully, the reader's going to enjoy that journey too.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. Well, then I made him go down there and open that box. Well, you're the writer. Of course you did. So, two of the books I touched on earlier, which personally I found very different for you because of the shoot 'em up element of it, the action adventure spy novel part of it. The Chosen People in Chosen Land.
In Promised Land. Chosen
Promised
People in
Land.
Promised Land. Yep.
I kept doing that when I put it on the shelf, so I apologize for that. How different was that for you to write? I mean, you had the main character who was a lawyer, but you had that spy element to it.
Yeah, that was, I really wanted to write some books that had something to do with Israel.
Okay.
And I've been over there 15, 16 times.
Wow.
And so I've spent a lot of time over there, going all the way back to college. I did a foreign study program in biblical archaeology in Israel. So I'd had that in the back of my mind that I wanted to do something about this. The only thing really that I've had that I wanted to eventually do. Like, I don't have an idea for my next book. Okay. When I finish this book, it's, well, what's next? What's at the bottom of the stairs,
Right.
But that I had wanted to do something about Israel, and just in a way that I thought introduce people to the land, the people, to some of the nuance of that world.
Yeah.
And I had done some. My second novel, The Trial, which is a murder case, had some of that kind of stuff in it. And I remember the first
Okay.
time I was writing that sort of style, it felt kind of weird. I was like, oh man, I'm writing about this fight scene. I mean, that's kind of odd. I'm a pretty peaceful guy. Um, but that kind of helped me. I cut my teeth on that and have done it a little bit over time. But you're exactly right. I went more full bore with that in those two novels because that character was an undercover type of
Right.
guy. And
Yeah.
but I tell you, Chris, it's kind of weird when I write those scenes because I want to be realistic, but I'm also, so I'm feeling all the empathy for all these people, and I know that sounds kind of weird, but they have to become somewhat real to you as a writer if you're going to communicate them as real people for the reader.
Yep.
So yeah, I wouldn't say it was a challenge, but it was a different feel.
Okay. And I will agree with that. I different feel is, I mean, I still enjoyed it. I mean, again, like you've always said here is that, you're learning something. So, and having never been to Israel, it was wonderful to visit that way. So, and to meet the characters who are part of the country, so yeah, I really appreciate it. And I did get a good chuckle out of the puppy that becomes larger.
Yeah.
So I got a good chuckle on it because my daughter had just adopted a Pyrenees mix and your dog was doing what her dog was doing. And I'm like, this is really weird.
Well, I have a dog in just about every book.
Yeah.
And I had a reader years ago write me an email and said, she enjoyed the dogs. And she said, but you had never, ever let anything bad happen to a dog. And I wrote her back and I promised her that I would never kill a dog in one of my books. People can die.
Yep.
Okay. But there are no dogs are going to be harmed in the writing of this book.
And I'm going to hold you to
imaginary.
that. I spent those two books going, don't hurt this dog.
Well, I'll go ahead and take that off the table. You don't have to worry about that. There's no more. I lost my possibility of suspense for that aspect of a book, but I'll give it up.
Sounds good. You know what? You'll get an angry email the minute you pull off a dog.
Okay.
Cats, I'm okay with, but so I had one of the questions that popped up online was somebody would like to know who some of your favorite Christian authors are. And I'm game to hear about fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah, I do not do a lot of reading.
Okay.
I just, once again, I mean, I'm still practicing law and then writing, and I don't have a ton of time. I really like Charles Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Charles and I are buddies, and we've known each other for a long time.
Okay.
In terms of another legal writer that does legal drama, Randy Singers, I think it does a good job. I like Randy. I've read some of Randy Alcorn's stuff, and I have a lot of respect for Randy as a person. I did a recommendation for one of Terry Blackstock's books.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I've enjoyed, getting to know other writers at events that we've gone to. And I tell you, I could just tell the folks on this thing, the people that work in this arena and write in this genre, my respect for them is just at the highest level for the kind of people that they are, the genuineness, the humility, the desire to be somebody positive. What else can I say? I mean, I just have to tell you, they're an amazing group of people. And I've thoroughly enjoyed that interaction over the years. But those would be some that, I have read that I've enjoyed. But there are a lot of others out there that, go out there and sample and find somebody that, strikes a nerve that, encourages or inspires you.
Yeah, I agree with everybody you said there. Some of them write both fiction and nonfiction. And
right.
Just, and I, and working on the outskirts of your writing world, and watching the way you writers, the way you encourage each other. You like your own success, don't get me wrong, I understand that, but you cheer each other on as much as that.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's unique to the Christian world. I would say
Yeah.
it probably, is definitely because of, we realize that we're part of a bigger story here.
Yeah.
And that we're all trying to advance something for a common good. And so I think that's just a healthy attitude. And, I'm part of a group that does that. So
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. So one of the things we were talking about, because I grumbled at you, is your books, Life Support and Life Everlasting. And I had shared how I, almost threw the one out the window when I got done with it. So you were telling me an interesting part about that story. So if you haven't read Life Support, you're going to probably find out a little bit about it. Sorry.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. And actually, the house where we're staying this evening, the guy that lives here, those are his two favorite books.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, this is the guy. And
well, bring him on. Let's talk to him.
No. He loves those two books.
That's awesome.
And really, what happened on that? It's really one book, and it was too long, and it got cut in two, and it has a cliffhanger, y'all.
Oh my gosh!
It's horrible. Okay, I'll just tell you, it's horrible.
It's one of the worst I've ever read.
It's definitely the worst I've ever had any connection with or awareness of. So, the unashamed marketing plug is just go ahead and buy both of them, so that when you finish Life Support, you can go straight into Life Everlasting. Now,
I agree.
But one thing about those books, there is a spiritual theme in those stories about the healing power of music and worship.
Yeah.
And, I so enjoyed opening up a window into that world. And I was influenced and helped in writing those books by a Christian pianist named John Elliott, you can look him up. And he was a concert pianist and has also been a composer and a singer and a songwriter. And so, and then another person helped me as well, who had really played her keyboard for people that were sick and, saw God, touch them in unique and wonderful ways. So I really enjoyed, putting that element in those stories. I mean, those books open with a woman pushing her husband off the edge of a cliff. So, okay, it's got some drama. All right. And the guy's in a coma for an entire book. All right. So there's all this battle going on. Like what's going to happen? Is she going to get caught? And all this other stuff. And so, so it's got all kinds of plot stuff, but it's also got some of the coolest, I think, spiritual dynamics in anything I've written.
Yeah. Is that, and not just in this one, you have spiritual elements in, all your books, obviously. Is that something that naturally comes to you as part of the story? Or do you have to, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I'm not trying to pick on anything, but just interestingly is that, because I know some people struggle with it to make it sound natural.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's fun.
Okay.
And my first novel, The List, has got all kinds of stuff in it. And I mean, the book I'm writing right now, my main character had an experience with the Lord the other day, this past week, that, I mean, the people that are listening to this are not going to be surprised at this next statement, and I didn't see it coming. I mean, he walked into this room and he had an encounter with God, and I said, "Oh, brother, this is amazing." And so, one of the things about that sort of stuff is when I write a scene like that, and then I find myself wanting to go back there myself, then I know I've got something.
Okay.
And I'm not wanting to write something that comes across, and this is for the reader to evaluate, that comes across as forced or contrived, but something that could happen in the dynamic of this person's life based on who they are. And so I'm trying to be credible, but I'm also writing out of a place that I've sometimes personal experience and sometimes aspirational experience, which I mean, I wish I was more like this. I mean, I've written you guys about people that pray, and I've finished a scene and I would say, Lord, I'd like to be more like this myself,
Yeah.
But anyway, you can tell I get into it.
You do. I love hearing that. I like that your characters affect, well, you.
Yeah.
So, and then you just happen to share them with the rest of us. So that's kind of nice. We appreciate that, by the way. So somebody asked the question, and it's got a really good word in the middle of it. What was the impetus for writing The Choice?
Yeah, I've written several novels that I would call topic related or issue novels.
Right.
And that was my chance to write about adoption and life.
Okay.
Pro-life. And so what I wanted to do was take a word that has been kind of hijacked by one segment of society, and I wanted to redeem it.
Okay.
And that's what that word is, choice. And I wanted to show what it could be like if somebody made a choice for life. And then the other aspect of that book, my wife was adopted as an infant.
How interesting.
And so I knew a lot just from living with her about some of the things that an adoptee experiences. And so in the story, this teenage girl has twin boys that are both adopted by different families. Okay, that's the background. And so I was also able to want to delve into that dynamic and just honor people that were willing to make the sacrifice to bring a child into the world, even in difficult circumstance. And when I've done some other books like that, another example would be A Time to Stand, which I wrote after Ferguson events in Ferguson, Missouri, a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And so what I do in that, I want to be careful not to write what I call a crusader novel, which is one in which the message that you're trying to communicate overrides the integrity of the story. You have to write a story. Of course, it's the reader to decide whether I'm successful or not, but you have to write a story with characters that can sustain the message that's being communicated. Okay.
Yep.
And so one more example of that real quick was my third novel, The Sacrifice, I wrote after Columbine. Because I just heard there's this great cry in the country. What can we do in the face of this kind of a horrific event? And I remember when I wrote that, there were people that said, well, that's going to be old news by the time this book comes out. And sadly, they were mistaken, because that has continued to be a challenge and a problem in our society. So those are all examples for that particular caller of, and those are the only three actually of the 22 books that I wrote with an issue in my heart that I wanted to address.
Yeah, you do in other ones. I mean, you've taken on, drinking and.
Well, you're right in the sense I was talking about more of a national scope.
Okay.
I wrote a book called A House Divided about an alcoholic lawyer.
Yeah.
And that was, that was my effort to address that particular problem. Right. And I guess that's a good point, Chris. I think I probably could put that in that same category. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. you know, when I like when you phrase it that way. You don't want to write a crusader book. You want to give your perspective on a story, and you know, want to make it clear, but you don't want it to cram it down their throats. So,
and you have to earn the reader's
yeah,
trust.
yeah,
And because there might be once or twice in a novel where, and hopefully the readers don't even are aware of it, but I throw something in there, a sentence or two. That's all. That is, you know, a nugget that I'm wanting to just impart.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, okay, we're gonna go back to the choice, because you know, obviously we know where you're headed with it, but you give the perspective of that young mom, both sides. You know, this is what society says, and it, you know, and you didn't shy away from that. You didn't make it the right choice, you know, the abortion. You know, right choice was adoption for her. It could have been that she kept the boys, but
Right.
I like that part of it. I think that's why those types of books stand well, is because you're allowing the character to make those decisions on their own, so to speak.
And in the choice, I did something I've never done. I wrote a little letter at the end of the book to moms, all moms.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, just a way of honoring every woman that has gone through what it takes to bring a life into this world. Because I've never had more respect for a human being than I did after our first child was born, than I did for my wife. I mean, my respect for her just went to the moon. And when she met her birth mother when she was 40.
Wow.
And when her birth mother wanted to know her. And so Kathy flew out to California. Her mother lived in La Jolla, south of San Diego. And she got out off the plane and had a dozen roses for her mom, and gave her a note that said, "Thank you for giving me life, and thank you for wanting me in your life."
Yeah. Interesting. I'm getting goosebumps. Those are great stories.
Well, that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, lucky you. Oh, wait, lucky us. So let me see. I want to make sure we're not missing any questions here. So Becky, you know, Becky, she wants to know, of your 22 books, which is your least favorite?
Yeah, well, I'll tell her the same thing I told a middle schooler who once asked me that question, you know, because you get the question, what's your favorite book? And he asked me what was my worst book. And so I took all my legal training that I've had in that moment. And I looked at him and I said, why don't you read all of them, and then you tell me which is the worst one? So,
there, that's a good answer, Becky. So lucky you.
I still hadn't heard from that little guy. So I guess he's still working on it.
Yeah, he's watching now, and he's going to write you tomorrow. I figured it out. So if there is something about you that let me rephrase this in correct English. Is there something about you that you would like your readers to know that they might not suspect? You know, do you like knitting?
Oh, wow. I tell you what, I don't even know what that would, you know, I'm sorry, Chris. I'm kind of drawing a blank on that.
That's okay. That means what we see is what we get. And
that's awesome. It really is. I'm really trying. I really want to be, you know, what I do in the stories is I want to show how God wants to work across the whole scope of life. It's not just in compartmentalized religious context. And so, you know, that's what I want to portray in the books. And frankly, that's what I want to live, the way I want to live my life. You know, I'm not perfect or anything, but that's my desire. But I don't really know of anything that would be interesting to say.
I have noted, and you mentioned that you're going fishing tomorrow. So fishing shows up in your books quite a bit. So that must be kind of important to you.
I do like it. I don't really get to go as much as it might appear I'll get to go maybe 4 or 5 times a year, but I do love the outdoors. I've always loved camping and hiking, and I've done that we have 4 children. They're all in their 30s or 40s now, but when they were little, I would spend a lot of time with them out in the woods, and just have always enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I love nature.
I gotta ask, do you tie your own flies or do you not?
No, but one of my law partners, he is phenomenal. He's a young guy, and I mean, his bugs are great. I'll be fishing mostly with his stuff tomorrow.
I wondered, and I happened to pop in my head, I said, you were talking about it in relative justice. So I was like, oh, I gotta remember to ask that. And then I forgot until the very end there. So it's such a fascinating thing. I mean, I have no reason to do it. I don't fish, but I just find that always fascinating, the fly tying.
I think one thing about me, I did think of, I'm 67 years old, and I'm amazingly immature in a lot of ways. I mean, when I'm with my grandkids, I can be the silliest thing. It's ridiculous.
They love it, don't they?
Yeah, I hope so, because that's what they're going to get. And so with this grandson that has Down syndrome, always I'm making up little silly songs to try to get him to brush his teeth or anything. I'm a big kid. So.
Well, that's good to know. We will remember that when we read about your murderer in the next one. So, good heavens, that hour went fast. But how do we find, well, obviously makerbookhouse.com, please buy all your books there. Where else can we find out information about you and your books and what you're writing next?
Yeah, I obviously have a website, robertwhitlow.com.
Okay.
And I am really trying to do a better job of communicating. It used to be that I'd send out 1 email a year when a new book came out. And my boys are telling me, my sons, that, Dad, people want to know a little bit more than that. So I have really started communicating a little bit more with folks and sharing information. And so if I would love to have folks go on there and subscribe.
Okay.
I'm not going to inundate you with stuff, and it's not all about selling books. I mean, sometimes it's just about other stuff. Yeah. And so, but that's where they can find out information.
That's exactly what we need to know. And you will get at least 1 newsletter from him a year. So that's
yeah.
So that is awesome. Well, and do you have a working title for your new book that we can look for?
Yeah, it's called Double Indemnity.
Oh, awesome.
But that's subject to change. So.
Yeah. And then probably around this time again next year or a little bit longer.
It'll be in the projected release date's June 3rd of 2023.
That's more than a year away.
I know. Go back and read Jimmy again or Mountaintop or the list.
That's a good answer. Tell me to shut up and do something else. Well, this has been great fun. I love getting to know you. I've enjoyed your books for, more years than either one of us probably want to admit that we've been doing it. So, but I look forward to the next one. And like I said, you have a definite standing invite to come in and see the source sometime. And we'd love to host you in person, but let's do this again.
Absolutely. It's fun.
So, well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. And if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, go find Robert's book and enjoy them all. Have a good night. Bye now.
Bye-bye.